Okay, so welcome everybody to today's session. My name is Nick Wallace and I work on the customer onboarding team at Turnitin. So I help all of our new customers get on board with using Turnitin products and help educators learn how to use our tools. So today we're going to be undertaking our instructor training. But before we get started, we don't have time to go through absolutely every aspect of Turnitin today. So I will, in a follow-up email with a copy of the recording, be providing some links to some really great resources that can help you understand Turnitin a little better, and also ways that you can incorporate Turnitin in the classroom. So make sure you keep an eye out for those in the follow-up email. As I mentioned, today's session is going to be recorded, and I will send through that follow-up email with the recording. If you do have any questions, please feel free to ask those today. But just considering the layout of the room, maybe Manjula, it might be easier to feed those through you, or if anyone does have any questions, you can pass the microphone across to them. And then if you do have any questions after the session today, please feel free to respond back to the follow-up email, or you can reach out to us to that email on the screen. So to learn about Turnitin, let's take a few steps back and consider a typical marking workflow. So maybe you already are marking online, or maybe you are even doing that on paper. But let's just consider that I pick up my first student's essay and I'm reading through that, and I'm happy with that, and I'm giving some feedback, and then I put it aside, and then I pick up my second student submission. And then as I'm reading through that, I'm wondering, some of this doesn't seem to be the student's work. Maybe it's maybe copied from the internet, or maybe they've copied that from another student. And then I pick up my next student and I'm reading through that again. And I'm starting to wonder, well, this kind of sounds like they might have used ChatGPT or maybe some AI to write this, because it doesn't really sound like them, and it's not really on the assessment task is what we were expecting to see from the students. So maybe I have some concerns the student is using AI in their work. And that's really it sort of informs two questions that we need to answer as we're going through student work and reviewing that. Firstly, we need to know if students are submitting their own original work. We want to make sure that what the student has submitted is what they have written. The second question is, how can I ensure the students are receiving high quality feedback? How can I make sure that that feedback that we're giving to the students is going to be taken on by them and help them to improve for the future? So that is where Turnitin Feedback Studio can help you. So Turnitin Feedback Studio harnesses advanced similarity and AI writing detection to help you safeguard the academic integrity of your institution, and also help you to accelerate the process of giving feedback and marking students' work, all in one nice, easy to use place. So when we are considering that question one that I mentioned before, when we're going through, how do we know that the students are submitting their own original work? Well, there's actually three areas in which Turnitin Feedback Studio can help you to do this. So the first one is what we call the similarity detection. So that's going to help you to identify if the student's work is potentially similar to other existing works. So essentially, does their work contain plagiarism? We also have the AI writing detection. So you can learn whether your students have used an artificial intelligence tool like ChatGPT to help them complete their work, whether that be the whole piece of work or parts of the work. And then finally, we have another tool there, which we call the document or the integrity flags. So these are going to help you to uncover intentional methods a student might undertake to help them to hide their work from the similarity or the AI detection, essentially to stop those tools working. So when we're considering the similarity detection as the first point, and this is kind of what Turnitin is mostly known for. So when the student's work is submitted through an assignment that has Turnitin enabled on it, we will compare the text within that student submission to content that exists within 3 different databases. We compare to our student papers database. So any other student submission that has been made through Turnitin at any university or institution around the world is stored in that repository. And that's going to help you to uncover if your students are copying from each other. The second is our database of web content. So nearly 100 billion web pages in that database. That's going to help you to understand if students are potentially copying and pasting from the internet. Finally, we have our journals and publications database. So this will help you to uncover if students are copying from the more premium or scholarly articles that might exist on the internet that perhaps a student might need to pay to get access to or have a subscription to be able to access that. So what this will do is generate what we call a similarity report. And you have a preview of what that looks like over on the left-hand side. But it will highlight all of the text within that submission that matches back to those content databases to highlight to you where you can look for potential plagiarism in a student's work. Now, it's really important to understand that Turnitin does not detect plagiarism. It will detect text similarity. Really important for us to know that difference there. So text similarity is when the ideas or words of another are present in one's work. Plagiarism is when the ideas or words of another are present in one's work without proper acknowledgement, credit, or attribution. Now, on this next slide here, I have 4 different examples of similarity matches. Some of them are plagiarism and some of them are not plagiarism. So let's look at this first one here. So if we look at this text here that's highlighted, that is Turnitin telling me that this text is matching. However, that text is contained within quotation marks and a citation has also been provided. So while this is text similarity, this is not plagiarism because that proper acknowledgement has been provided by the student. So because that is cited and quoted correctly, there's nothing for me there to give the student some feedback on. I wouldn't have to address that and I can continue on. Now, in this next example, we can see we have the quotation marks, but the student has not provided the citation. So citations are typically required so that the reader of the work can understand where that information has come from. This next example here, we can see similarity matching and a citation, but there are no quotation marks. Finally, we have this one here at the bottom, where the student has not provided a quotation mark or any citation there. So when we're looking at these, this is sort of the process that you'll undertake to determine if a similarity match is plagiarism. As we can see this first example here, no, that isn't plagiarism. These 2 in the middle here are examples of plagiarism. However, the student has made some intention to tell us that it's not their own ideas or words. They may not have done so correctly, so that is an opportunity that we have to provide the student some feedback on the correct attribution process. Now, in this last one here, we have no attribution there. So essentially, the student is passing these words off as their own. So something like this, which is a little more serious, is usually something that you would follow up in line with your academic integrity policy. So as you're going through and using Turnitin, and you may have come across this in the past if you have used Turnitin as an instructor or even as a student, we have the concept of what we call the similarity score. So the similarity score is a measure or the percentage of the text within the student's work that is matching back to content in those databases. So one of the questions you'll start to ask is, what should the similarity score be of the submission? The truth to that is there is not one magic number that represents academic misconduct. And how much similarity you're expecting to see in the student's work is going to have a number of different reasons there. But the most common one, or the one that sort of is the most important, is to consider the expectations and the style of the task that you're asking of the students. For example, if I'm asking my students to complete a creative writing piece, maybe they're writing a narrative or a story, or perhaps a piece of poetry. That should really be their own thoughts, words, and ideas. There wouldn't need to be a lot of research for that to be completed, and therefore not a need to include references and citations. So in a piece of work like that, we'd be expecting to see very little similarity. If we compare that to a research-based assignment, so the student is having to complete research, and that research is going to inform their writing. So because of that, they're having to probably include some quotes, ideas other than their own, including some references and citations. And because of the type of writing that is, which is a little more academic in style, they might be including text strings that should not be altered. For example, titles of laws, legal cases, names of places, names of publications, even just generally names of things. Depending on how long they are, will sometimes show similarity matching over them. So a research-based task, we are expecting to see more similarity there. Again, a short answer response. So maybe you've given your students a quiz of 10 questions, and maybe they have to respond to each of them in, say, 50 words. Well, again, have a think about what you're asking the student to respond to. If I ask my students, what is the capital of Australia? And all of my students answer, the capital of Australia is Canberra, they're all going to have a similarity match back over that response. Doesn't mean they have copied from each other, but there is only a very limited way in which I can answer that question, and there is actually only, in fact, one correct answer. So in something like that, we would probably be expecting to see similarity there. Now, to go into that concept a little bit further, I have two sample similarity reports up here on the screen. Now, if you can't quite read the text from the back of the room, don't worry too much. But in the task that we gave to the students here, they were asked to complete some research about apples and why they are such a popular fruit choice in Australia. The document on the left-hand side has a similarity score of 5%, and the one on the right-hand side has a score of 30%. Now, I just want you to keep in mind which one you think might contain plagiarism. Now, you don't have to answer that to anyone, but just think in your head which one you think contains plagiarism. We're going to review each of these, and we're going to start with the one on the left-hand side. So we can see here, the first paragraph is highlighted. There are no quotation marks, and there's no citation there. So I can say that the student has probably copy and pasted that text from the internet. Now, if we look through the rest of the document, there's no other similarity matches, no other citations, no references, no demonstration that research has been completed there. Now, let's compare that to the one on the right-hand side, has a significantly higher similarity score. The first section is also highlighted, but that is over the question that we've given to the students to respond to. So the topic question or the prompt will often show a similarity match, especially if other students have also included that, because they all have the same piece of text on their page. Next, we have a match over a citation. So the Harvard School of Public Health, 2019. Citations commonly show similarity matches because it is highly likely that another student somewhere in the Turnitin database has also included those exact words as a citation. So they're typically nothing for us to be of concern, and we can continue on. In the next paragraph, we have some common wording. Apples are a good source of nutrition. Now, have a think about how many times you think those exact words are on the internet. It's probably thousands of times. So again, probably not something that we're really worried about, and we'll continue on. Next, we have a quote. So we can see the text is highlighted, but it has quotation marks, and the citation has also been provided as well. So that's great, nothing of concern, continue on. Now, in this last paragraph here, we do have a little bit of similarity matching, but it's not a significant amount. The terminology that has been highlighted here is referring to how apples are picked and stored in modified atmospheric environments. Now, that is a very specific subject to be talking about. So the student in this paragraph is talking about apple storage and picking. That's very specific. So sometimes industry or domain-specific terminology might be highlighted. The student, however, has provided me with a citation here at the end, so I'm not overly concerned about that. So I'll continue on. And at the bottom, we have the reference list. So references will also show similarity matching for the same reason that citations do. Somewhere in the Turnitin database, some other student has probably also included that exact reference, so it will show a similarity match back to them. So again, nothing I need to be concerned about. I'll continue on. So now if we take a step back just for a moment and consider those two side by side, well, the one on the left-hand side had a significantly higher similarity score. All of those similarity matches were acceptable. There was no plagiarism in that document. Whereas on the left-hand side, the student had plagiarism in the very first paragraph of their document. So this is essentially what I'm saying here is that similarity scores are not necessarily reliable indicators of misconduct. It really will take you to go through and review each of those similarity matches and use your academic and professional judgment to determine if any of those matches are plagiarism, and then have a think about how you're going to address those. Okay. So moving on to the AI detection, which was the second part of the original work. So like the similarity report, Turnitin will go through and check a student's submission as long as it contains 300 words of long-form English writing, and identify if a student may have used AI writing tools like ChatGPT to help them complete their work. It is really important that to understand that this tool is not detecting misconduct. It is simply highlighting where AI may have been used in the student work. The reason I highlight that is we don't understand or know what expectations you have set to the student about if they are allowed to use AI in the task or not. Really also important to understand that this should not be the only piece of evidence that you use. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on when we review a report, but it is only one piece of evidence there in reviewing and understanding if a student is using AI in their work. Okay. So moving on to question 2 there. How can I ensure my students are receiving high quality feedback? So we know that providing feedback to students is a very time-intensive task. So Turnitin created within the product a tool called Quick Marks. So Quick Marks are like a comment bank that you can create to help you easily reuse comments over and over again. And they can be used across multiple classes and multiple assignments. It's as simple as clicking and dragging a comment over across onto the document to apply that. And you get a bit of a preview of what that looks like there. Now, the reason why Quick Marks are such a loved feature of Turnitin Feedback Studio is because, as I mentioned, it does take a really long time to provide feedback to students. An example here that is one of the most beneficial types of feedback, which is called Where to Next feedback. You can see this example here. It's going to take you quite a long time to go through and craft that feedback. However, if you create that as a quick mark the first time you do that, the next time you come across to another student, you can quickly and easily apply that quick mark to their work. So we'll go in and have a look at the quick marks a little bit later in the product. But we're going to dive in now and have a look at some similarity reports. But before I do that, I just did want to stop and check if there were any questions. So if you're in the auditorium, you can ask on the microphone, or if you've got a question, if you're joining through on Zoom, please feel free to do that in the chat. There is a question. I'm wondering if Gradescope's digitization capabilities can be integrated with Turnitin to enhance. Oh, okay. So there's a question there about another Turnitin product called Gradescope. So at the moment, there is no integration between those two products. We are only doing similarity matching on typed text work, but it is sort of a question that is asked of us quite often. Jeff, nothing to sort of report on that at the moment. But if we do have something to let you know on that, we'll definitely do let you know. Does anyone else have any questions, or anyone in the auditorium with any questions so far? Nope. Okay, perfect. So we are now going to jump across and have a look at a similarity report. Now, let me just jump into a different one here. Okay. So when you open up a similarity report, this is the screen that you will be presented with. So I will show you towards the end today. Let me just fix the zoom there. I will show you today towards the end of the call how to enable Turnitin on your assignments in Moodle. But this is the screen here that you see when you open up a student submission. So you'll see the submission in the middle of the page as the student has presented that. So any images or any formatting that they have included will be shown to you there. Down the bottom left-hand corner, you can see the page count and the word count. And then over on the right-hand side here, you have the product toolbar. In the top right, we have the area in which you can apply the grade to the student work. And then next to that, you have where you can cycle or move between each submission that has been made to that assignment. So when you're going through and reviewing the student's work, the first thing that you should do is check those document or those integrity flags that I briefly touched on earlier. So this is always the first thing that you should do. And you can access that menu by clicking on this little flag icon here over on the right-hand side. So that there will either display a 0, a 1, or a 2. Now, if it displays a 0, there's nothing for you. Excuse me, there's nothing for you to check. But if it is a 1 or a 2, you should select that and check those flags. So the first one that I'm going to show you here is what we call hidden text. So hidden text is when a student uses text that is the same color as the page background, in this case it's white, to manipulate the text that appears to you as a human with the purpose of avoiding similarity or AI writing detection over that text. So the first example here is what we call white quotation marks. So this is where students will place text between white quotation marks. And the purpose of doing that is to trick Turnitin into thinking that text is a quote. So if I turn off that detection flag just for now, you can see that I can't see those quotation marks there, but they do technically exist on the page, but they're just white. And so because they're white, that's the reason why I can't see them. And so there is a function within Turnitin in which you can apply that will allow you to automatically exclude quotes from similarity detection. So what the student is hoping that you're going to use this setting, and as they're going through and reading the work, that's not going to show similarity over that because you have it, because it is a quote essentially. So if a student does do that, we will highlight that text to you anyway, so that you can see that it is between those hidden quotation marks. And then you can take the steps necessary to address that with the student. Essentially, the student is, I suppose, trying to cheat here or hide the similarity in their work. The next one we have here is what we call replaced spaces. So the student has placed a white colored symbol in between each word instead of a space. But as a human, that looks like a space. And again, what the student is trying to do is by removing the spaces, we're not able to distinguish each individual word, so we can't check that text for similarity. So again, if the student does do that, we will highlight that to you so you can see that and then address that in line with your academic integrity policy. Now, the last one here is one that you may have seen before, and it's not related to text similarity, but it is used by some students to increase their word count. So let's just say you've asked your students to write a 2,000 word essay, and maybe the student only writes 1,500 words. What some students have realized they're able to do is they can add in a paragraph of 500 words of white text at the end of their essay. And because it is white, as a human, I can't see that that text exists on the page, but it will technically count towards the word count because it is just white text, essentially. So again, if a student does do that, you are able to see that. And then again, you can have the conversation with them about why they have done that. Now, the second flag for review is what we call replaced characters. So I'm going to click on the learn more about this flag to show you that one. So in the Latin alphabet, which is what we use to write English, we have the letter E. In the Cyrillic alphabet, which is used in some Eastern European languages, there is a letter that is visually identical to the letter E, but to a computer is recognized as a different character because it comes from a different alphabet. And now what some students think that they are able to do is they can replace every E in their document with this Cyrillic character that looks like an E. And then as a human, I cannot tell the difference in those words, but to a computer, it's technically a different word. So again, if a student does do that, we will highlight that to you. But we actually go a step further and we swap all of those letters back to the Latin equivalent that they should be, and then perform a similarity check over that text anyway. So you can see while the student has done that, it hasn't in fact worked. So they're the integrity flags. So they're always the first thing that you should come through and review. And if there is anything there of concern, follow that up in line with your academic integrity policy. Now, because this student has used these cheating methods, I'm not going to proceed marking their work any further. And now I'm going to move on to the next student to go through and review their work. So I'm just going to pick the next submission here from the top. So that has taken me to that next submission, and there's no flags for me to review. So I can now move on and I can now have a look at the similarity report. So I'm going to do that by clicking this number here, the 55. So remember, that is the similarity score. So 55% of the text matches back to content in those databases. I need to go through and review all of those similarity matches. Now, the easiest way for me to do that is to start at the top of the document and work my way down as I'm going through and reviewing their work. So the first paragraph here, it says, the 12 apostles located on the is the text that has been highlighted. So that's these things here on the south coast of Australia. To me, I'm not overly concerned about that similarity match because in using that text, it seems like pretty common or generic wording, and the student hasn't presented any new information there. But what I'm going to do is click on the number 12, and that's going to show me the matching source text. So it says, the 12 apostles are located on the corner of Baringa Road and the Great Ocean Road. Whereas the student has said, the 12 apostles located on the southwest coast of Victoria. So I don't think the student has copied anything there. It's just a common similarity match, I suppose. So I don't need to address that and I can continue on. In the same paragraph, we have the names of places being highlighted. So the Port Campbell National Park and the Great Ocean Road. Again, the names of places will commonly show similarity matches. So again, I don't need to be concerned about that one. I'm not even going to check the matching text. I'll move on. In this next paragraph here, we can see a piece of text is highlighted. It is contained in quotation marks, and the student has also provided a citation there as well. So the student has done exactly what they need to do. They have quoted and attributed that correctly, so we'll continue on. Now, in this next paragraph here, we do have a piece of text that's highlighted. It is contained in quotation marks, but we are missing that crucial citation. So that is plagiarism that I do need to address this with the student, but I'm going to have to think about the context of that similarity match. There are quotation marks around it, so some attempt here has been made to acknowledge that it was not their own words. But they did, as I said, miss that citation. So maybe that was just an accident. And I know that the student knows how to quote correctly because they have done so above. So I'm just going to leave them some feedback on this. So I'm going to click and drag over that text, let go of my mouse, and I'm going to click this comment bubble here. I'm going to say missing citation. And then I'm going to click out to save that. So you see it will leave a bubble there. So the student would be able to go through and review that feedback. Moving down, we have another paragraph with text similarity matching. Instead of one very big long text similarity match, there's smaller chunks of matching. So what I think has probably happened here is that the student has made an attempt at paraphrasing. What I'm going to do is click on the number 4. And again, that is going to show me that matching source text. And you can see the text that matches is bolded and colored in the same color as the highlight. And so comparing that original source text and the student's text, it has confirmed, I do think they've tried to paraphrase, but they probably haven't done so as well as I would like them to have. So in an example like this, the student has also provided me the citation as well. So again, this example, the student has probably tried to do the right thing, but we need to help them improve their paraphrasing skills. So again, I'm going to click and drag over that text. Instead of leaving a comment though, I'm going to select the quick mark. And from my academic integrity library, so there's a whole heap of different libraries in there that we give you to begin with, but you can also go through and create your own. I'm going to select need to reparaphrase. So I don't have to type out that full comment. I've saved that in my comment bank already so that I can reuse that again. And so the way that you do that, when you're going through and typing out your comment, and when you save it, you can click on convert to quick mark and then save that to your library. Okay, moving on down. We have a big paragraph here that is highlighted. So highlighted in its entirety, no quotation marks, no citations, no acknowledgement there that it's not their own work. So in an example like this is something a little more serious, and I would probably want to address that in line with my academic integrity policy. In the next paragraph here, we have some similarity matching, but we've got 3 different colors kind of merged with each other. So this is an example of what we call a mosaic plagiarism. So students mixing different parts of different sentences from different sources. And now this last example here in the student's work, we have, again, chunks of similarity matching like we saw before. But if you were to read through that text, it doesn't really make a lot of sense and is quite illegible and very difficult to actually read and understand. So this is an example of a student using what is called a text spinner. And essentially what that will do is attempt to paraphrase the work for the student. It's a tool that you can use online that attempts to paraphrase the work for the student. Now, some of them are good at doing it and some of them are not that good. The ones that aren't that good don't have the ability to understand the context a word is being used in. To give you an example, I have seen a student writing a history essay about US President George W. Bush. And throughout the assignment, it is referring to him as George W. Tree. So tree and bush being synonyms, but the tool or the student was not clever enough to actually understand that that's his name, not the name of a plant. So that's just one example there. But other examples of that, the text is really difficult and hard to sort of understand. So be on the lookout for those as well. Alrighty, at the reference list, we do see similarity matching. So that is a good thing because it is telling us the student has used a reference that someone else has used, which is not bad. That's probably something that we do actually want to see. It tells us it's a real legitimate reference. What we don't want to see, however, is a reference list, the whole thing highlighted in one color. So maybe all red or all green or something like that. that is indicating to you that the student has potentially copied that entire reference list from someone else or from the internet. So if you do see a reference list highlighted all in one color, make sure that you go through and review those references and make sure that they align to what the student is talking about in their work. Okay. So that is the similarity report. I'm just going to show you a couple of other things here, and then I'll stop for questions. Over on the right-hand side here, we have the filter icon. So this allows you to exclude quotes. So any text between quotation marks, which is useful if you are expecting your students to include a lot of quotes in their work, and maybe it's cluttering the report, so you want to give yourself something a little more focused. And you can also exclude the bibliography there as well if you need to. The icon above that, the all sources, will show you every source, whether that be a student source, a publication, or something on the internet, every source that work matches back to. So you can see here, there's quite an extensive list of where that's matching back to. But a lot of this could be identical pieces of text from different sources. So maybe some text is on Wikipedia, and then it has to be copied to another website and then another website. Technically, you would see 3 matches back to that in that all sources. So the easiest one to sort of use is just this match overview here. Okay, so that is the similarity report there. Does anyone have any questions on that report specifically before we continue on? Nope, all good. Okay. So that's the report. Now we're going to take just a quick look at a few of the other grading tools. So we saw the comment and the quick mark. You also have the ability to click and drag on text. And then at the end of that pop-up, you see a little S with a line through it. That will add a red line through that text there for you. You can also click anywhere on the document and add in a quick mark or a comment, or you can also click this letter T to add in an inline text comment. Finally, the last on-document annotation tool that you have is, again, the quick marks, but you can open up the quick mark panel and click and drag the comment rather than selecting the text and then clicking it. Now, just be aware that if you click and drag from the side, it does not link it to the specific piece of text like it did when we selected the text and then applied the quick mark. So just be aware if you're doing that, making sure that it is added into an appropriate location. Moving down the grading tools, you also have your feedback summary. So this is where you can leave a voice comment to the students. So just an overall comment using your voice, just recording that for them. And then you also have the text overall comment. So this is where you can leave that summarized overall comment for the work. Finally, we have the rubric. So this here allows you to grade on a marking or grading rubric in 2 different ways. The first one here is kind of the speedy way, which is great if you're familiar with your rubric setup, because you can just click and drag to select each of those scales for the criterion. Or if you click this little compass icon here at the top, that opens it up into the traditional grid or matrix style so that you can select the cells there that you would like to apply. And select close. So I don't have the time to go through and show you the rubric creation process, but those resources that I link in the follow-up email will go into that in some more detail for you. Those rubrics can also calculate a score for you, should you have that set up. And then in the top right-hand corner here, you can also manually apply a score if you prefer to do that. So they are the grading and the feedback tools here. So we've gone through and finished grading that student's work. I'm going to open up another student submission now, and we're going to have a look at their the AI writing report for that student. So you can see here, for those submissions that contain more than 300 words of English, we see an AI writing score there. So that 24% represents 24% of the text within the submission has been identified as potentially AI generated. So we're going to open up that report. Let's refresh. So this is the student's work here. So we can see that, and then we can see the text there highlighted in blue has been identified as AI written. I'm going to bring up a different report there for this one, just to show you something else. So in the report, we will highlight the text in two different colors. So the blue color represents AI generated only text. So the student has gone to ChatGPT, they have asked it to write something for them and put that text in their document. We also highlight a second category of text in purple. So that is a student has asked ChatGPT to write them something. They have then used a paraphrasing tool like Quillbot to paraphrase that text for them, and then they have put that text into their document. So you can kind of think about it's a kind of AI generated twice, essentially. So we'll highlight that text there in purple. Again, really important to understand that what we are doing here is not identifying misconduct. We are identifying AI usage, and that is up to you to decide if that AI usage was appropriate or not. We don't know the expectations you've set to the students and what you have allowed them to do. So really important to remember that. Really important to also consider that it should not be used as the only piece of evidence that you use to make a claim against a student that they have been misusing AI. There are a whole heap of other different pieces of resources that you can use. So to encourage you to explore the resources that we have here. And I would really encourage you to look at this AI writing puzzle. So this AI writing puzzle, and I will link this directly to you, has links for each of these different pillars about AI usage and AI writing, and how you can have conversations with your students about AI, how to approach potential AI misusage, and also different terminology and how to develop a policy within the institution on acceptable usage of AI. So really encourage you to have a look at that and read through those linked articles, but remember, it should not be the only piece of evidence that you use there. So that is the rest of the grading tools in the AI writing report. Does anyone have any questions on those? No, perfect. Okay, so now that we have reviewed the report, and let's quickly touch on, you can download out each of those as well. So you can click the download button here in gray, and then just select current view. Or if you want to download the AI writing report, you can do that just by clicking the download button here in the top right-hand corner. So now that we've seen all of the different reports that are available to you within Turnitin, I'm now going to jump across into Moodle, and I'm going to show you how you can activate Turnitin on your assignments. So when you're creating your assignments, and you can also do this for assignments that you have already created, when you're doing that, you'll see within the assignment settings that there is a section that says Turnitin plagiarism plugin. So you'll set your assignment up as you regularly do, but you open up the Turnitin plagiarism plugin settings. So the first option here is to choose if you would like to enable Turnitin on that assignment or not. So if you select no, we won't want checking on those assignments. You'll have an option here of displaying the report to students. So if you would like the students to view the report, you can either select yes or no. And we do recommend allowing students to be able to view those reports because it helps to take away the fear of having Turnitin. But students can also use the reports themselves to identify where they have plagiarized and fix that up before they make a final submission. So it can really be used in a formative way. You'll have the ability to determine if the students can only submit the Turnitin accepted file types, which is when it's set to no, or the student can submit anything, even if Turnitin cannot generate a similarity report for that. So things that we allow are typically things like Word documents, PowerPoints, PDFs, Google Docs files. So anything like that, the student can submit that to Turnitin. Next one is store student papers. So this here is going to allow you to determine if you would like to have the student submissions for this assignment to be stored in that student repository that I mentioned earlier back in the session today. So this one here, you can choose to not store or to store in the standard repository. Now, where you would choose to not store is if the student submission is likely to contain highly personal or sensitive information about them or someone else they have written about, which doesn't come up too often. So most of the time, just store in the standard repository because that's going to allow you to check against those submissions to make sure students are not copying from each other. Next, you have your comparison repositories. So you'll be able to choose to check against the student papers, check against the internet content, and the journals and publications. I recommend just having all three set there to yes. Underneath, you have the report generation speed. So these are three options that you can select here, and this determines when the similarity report will generate. So the first option here is generate reports immediately. Student cannot resubmit. So the report will generate, student will submit, the report for the submission will generate, and then that's it. The student cannot resubmit to that. The second one here is generate reports immediately, and a student can resubmit up until the due date. So this is the one that we recommend using because it's going to allow the students to use it in a formative way. They can review the reports themselves, find any areas where they may have thought they've paraphrased or maybe they missed a citation, fix that up and resubmit. The last one there, generate reports on due date. So students can submit as many times as they like, but the reports will not generate for the submission until the due date. Underneath, you have those exclusions that I mentioned before when we were looking at the similarity report. So you can set them by default, but I recommend setting these as no. And finally, if you see the grammar check there, you can select the settings for that. So the grammar handbook is the level of information given about the mistake the student may have made, as well as the dictionary there. So for example, US English or UK English there. And then the different grammar and spelling categories. So they are all of the assignment settings there for the Turnitin. So once you continue finishing creating your assignment and then just select save and display or save and return to course, whichever you prefer. And so then from that point, students can begin submitting to the assignment and the similarity reports will generate for those submissions. So to access the submissions, we select from the assignment inbox, we can see the student file submissions here that the student has uploaded. Underneath that is the ID number for the submission. And then to open up the report, we simply just need to click on either the score or the pencil to do that. So the similarity score will come through to the assignment inbox. So I'm going to select that one, and that will open up into the document view. So from here, you can review the reports, use the grading and the feedback tools as you wish. So that is the process of enabling Turnitin on your assignments. Does anyone have any questions about that? So there's another question here. What are some of the security measures that Turnitin takes to protect student data and prevent unauthorized access? Yep, so our systems are certified. I can't remember off the top of my head the name of the certification that we have, but all of our systems are certified for their security. We also prevent the direct login of instructors at your institution to turnitin.com and for students as well. So that helps them sort of circumvent access through Moodle. So that is also cut off there as well. And I can also send you some more information sort of about that security and our different privacy policies for that. So Jeff, I'll include those in the follow-up email for you as well. Alrighty. Any other questions from anyone else in the audience before we wrap up for today? No? Okay. Well, let me just jump back into the slide deck then, and we'll just finish up with a couple of slides. So, recapping our workflow here. Step 1, as you're coming through and reviewing those student reports, always remember to check those document flags first. If you see anything of concern there, escalate that or have a conversation with your students. Now, step 2 and step 3 can be done in whichever order you prefer. But in this example here, step 2 was to check the AI score. Does that meet the expectations of the task? If there is AI writing identified in the student work, to what extent has that been done? What other pieces of evidence can I use if that was not appropriate for them to do so? In step 3, check the similarity matches and apply grading and feedback. And remember, is it a skills-based issue? So is this something that I can turn into a teachable moment and provide some feedback to the student? Or is this an academic integrity issue? And who else do I need to speak to about escalating that or dealing with that with the student? So finally, just quickly touching on the help guides. So we have extensive help guides to help you understand how Turnitin works and how to use it. So you can access these at a slightly different site because they've just migrated across to a new help center. So I'll include the link to that in the follow-up email, but it's now guides.turnitin.com. So check through those guides, and wherever you are within the Turnitin interface, there's always a question mark in the top right-hand corner to take you across to our help center. If you're still not sure what you're looking for, please reach out to your institution's administrator. So this is Manjula. Otherwise, you can also reach out to us as well using that email address on the screen, and that will be included in the follow-up email that I send through today. You will also be able to come back and watch that recording that I've sent through as well. So that brings us to the end of the session today. So thank you everybody for jumping on. For those of you who have never learnt Turnitin before, used Turnitin before, I hope you've learnt something new and inspired some ways you can use Turnitin in the classroom. And for those of you who have used Turnitin before, maybe you have learnt something new or refreshed something in your memory. As I mentioned, the session will be accompanied with a follow-up email with the recording and all of the other different resources that I've mentioned today. That email will also have a link to a survey, which you can access either in the chat now, or you can scan the QR code up on the screen on your phone. We do really appreciate feedback we get on these sessions because it helps us to make improvements and find areas that are working well and areas that are not working well and fix those up. So please, if you could take 30 seconds to fill out that one. So either scanning the code or follow the link in the email. But that brings us to the end of the session today. So thank you everybody again for joining. I will stay on a couple more minutes if there are any other questions. Otherwise, we can sign off here and you can enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you for the day you spent, and then we started on time, and then now we end of the session. If you have some question, maybe you can ask finally. Otherwise, we can end the session. Okay. Okay. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Have a great day.